perfectly made bed that Elena had just fluffed that morning. She stood in the doorway now, staring at the pillow like it might move. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence that followed, steady and too loud. Mark was still unloading boxes in the living room. "Elena," he called. "Did you leave your phone on the bed?" "No," she said, her voice tight. She approached the pillow slowly. The air smelled faintly of ozone, sharp and metallic. She could almost taste it. When she pressed her hand to the cotton, the sound stopped, and the fabric was warm, as though something inside had been breathing. By the time Mark entered the room, the beat had faded, leaving only the tick of the wall clock. He brushed dust off his jeans. Probably a pipe in the wall. Water hammer, they call it. Elena didn't answer. The house was new to them, but already felt inhabited. Not by people exactly, but by the hum of things always just beneath hearing. The property had been built in 1962, a low-slung marvel of glass and cedar, hidden deep in the forest an hour outside the city. It had been vacant for years when they found it, cheap enough that Mark called it an investment, though Elena thought the word sounded clinical. The house overlooked a valley filled with mist. From her studio window, she could see the outline of bare trees, black veins against the pale morning sky. Mark loved its geometry, its precision, every corner perfect, every surface smooth. "No history here," he said, as though that were comfort. But Elena preferred things with history. She painted the forgotten edges of the world, crumbling greenhouses, discarded dolls, rust blooming on old swings. Her canvases filled one side of her new studio, but even as she worked, she felt the stillness behind her, pressing. It started with the smallest details. A palette knife moved half an inch overnight, a cup of turpentine that suddenly smelled of rain. At first, she thought fatigue was playing tricks, long days unpacking, disrupted sleep. But then came the smell, a faint tang of ozone again, like the air before lightning. It followed her from room to room, lingering in the hallways. Mark dismissed it easily. "It's the wiring. Old house, new contacts, static from humidity." Elena tried to nod, but the logic didn't soothe her. The scent had presence. It wasn't of the house, but in it. Then came the movements. Her paintbrushes migrated on their own. The refrigerator opened to reveal a milk jug she didn't remember buying. One night in the living room, she heard the low creak of footsteps circling the sofa while she pretended to read. Each step was deliberate, dragging across the distant floorboards. She held her breath. "Mark?" she whispered. He was asleep down the hall. And then there was the shower. The water hissed against tile, a whisper that filled the small space. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth sink in, until she felt eyes on her. Not from above, where the light glowed through the steam, but behind her, inside the mirror fogged to opacity. Her skin prickled. She turned. Nothing. Only her reflection, pale with confusion, her own breath condensing into the shape of a handprint that wasn't hers. 5 long fingers pressed from the inside of the mirror's surface, slowly fading back into fog. She screamed. When Mark came running, towel at his waist, his face softened at once into concern filtered through irritation. He listened, touching the glass. "You sure it wasn't your hand?" "It appeared while I was watching." "Elena, steam patterns can look like anything. Faces, hands, our brains connect dots." Her voice lowered. "It was moving, Mark." His sigh filled the silence between them. "You've got to stop feeding it. The more attention you give it, the more your brain invents." Invents. The word landed cold. That night, when she lay awake beside him, the silence was vast. And beneath it, faint and almost tender, she heard it again. The wet thudding inside the pillow. That night, when she lay awake beside him, the silence was vast. And beneath it, Faint and almost tender, she heard it again. The wet thudding inside the pillow. Thud. Pause. When morning came, Mark avoided eye contact. He was gentle but distant, reminding her to keep perspective. He quoted articles about pareidolia, confirmation bias, micro-dreams that occur between sleep and wake. He was careful with his tone, comforting on the surface, but each phrase bent to disbelief. She began writing down the things she noticed in a notebook: the temperature drops, the random thuds at 3 a.m., the smell of ozone thickest near the bedroom closet. When she showed him, his smile didn't reach his eyes. "You're documenting hallucinations now? I'm proud of your commitment." Tears threatened, but she blinked them back. "Something's wrong with this house." "Something's wrong, yes," he said softly, "but maybe it's not the house." Even his kindness felt like a trap.
The house itself seemed to recoil from them. The floorboards popped at odd hours, not settling but reacting. Her brushes splayed like they'd been chewed. The sense of being observed became unbearable. In her studio, she caught her reflection turning its head a split second after she did, as though it lagged behind. She stopped painting altogether. The silence, the real one, not the ghostly kind, grew oppressive. Mark worked late in his office, eyes locked to spreadsheets. The glow of his monitor illuminated the half-empty bourbon glass beside him. When she entered, he didn't look up. "Can you just listen without explaining?" she asked. He finally faced her. "I always listen." "There's something here," she gestured vaguely, helplessly. "It's angry." "Elena," he said, rising, "you're amplifying stress signals. When the mind can't process, stop diagnosing me." The shout startled even her. It rang against the glass walls, fading into the forest outside. Mark's mouth tightened. "I'm trying to help." "No, you're trying to win." That night, they slept facing opposite directions. Between them on the bed lay the pillow that sometimes breathed. 2 days later, Mark arrived home with boxes of hardware. Cameras, sensors, wires, technology lined the living room like silver bones. "I'm putting in motion sensors," he said. "Thermal imaging, infrared, sound meters. If there's anything here, we'll catch it. Data doesn't lie." Elena said nothing. He worked methodically through the weekend, installing cameras in corners, connecting monitors, adjusting focus. A soft mechanical hum filled the house now, replacing silence with an artificial heartbeat. When he finally powered it up, a low chime announced each room. Kitchen active, hallway active, bedroom active. "You'll see," he said. "Nothing's there. It'll give you peace of mind." But when the feeds came online, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that the house was watching itself. The images flickered faintly, grainy shapes sculpted in grayscale. Sometimes, only for a frame, she thought she saw movement in the blind spots between lenses. Mark reviewed footage every night, muttering to himself, confident. No anomalies, just the house breathing. You hear that? Breathing. Air ducts. Days stretched into a rhythm of unease. Elena barely slept. The cameras clicked softly as they adjusted for light, like eyelids fluttering in sequence. The ozone smell grew sharper still, no longer before the storm, but as if lightning lived inside the walls. Then the storm came. The first crack of thunder rolled through the forest, shaking the windows. Rain tore across the roof, 1,000 nails driving into the dark. The lights flickered, dimmed, and died. The hum of machines ceased. The house sighed, as though relieved. "Backup batteries," Mark said, walking briskly to his office. "It'll switch to offline mode, don't worry." Elena stood in the living room, staring out at the jagged tree line illuminated by lightning. For one terrible moment, she thought she saw someone standing outside, her own reflection looking back, expressionless. A scream echoed, faint and short, from Mark's office. She ran. The screens glowed faintly on backup power, greenish and grainy. Mark sat rigid at his desk, eyes locked to the central monitor. Rain streaked the windows behind him. The room smelled electric, ozone thick as iron. "Elena, don't move," he whispered. Her pulse roared in her ears. "What?" He pointed to the screen. "Thermal feed, look." On the monitor, the image was stark and bright against the near black shapes of furniture. There was Mark's own heat signature, a humanoid silhouette sitting at the desk. Behind it, behind him, stood another form, faint but undeniable, its outline shimmering orange-yellow, too close to separate. It pulsed rhythmically. "Oh my God!" Mark swallowed hard. "Must be a ghost image, residual heat." But as he spoke, the second shape moved. It leaned closer, aligning its outline to his. The two signatures began to merge until only one remained, and the heartbeat sound synchronized with his breath. "Elena?" he said, but it came out wrong. The tone fractured, echoing like two voices speaking at once. His hand trembled over the keyboard. "Turn it off," she said. I can't. It's just interference. Mark, turn it off." The lights flickered on for half a second, long enough for her to see his reflection in the monitor. His eyes glowed faintly, as though they reflected light that wasn't there. The lights went out again, and in that half-second of darkness, she heard movement behind him that wasn't his, the slick sound of something unfolding, like wet fabric being wrung dry. Then the whisper, close to her ear though she was across the room. "He believes now." The power surged. All the monitors flashed white. Mark convulsed, chair tipping backward. "Elena!" His voice fragmented. "Help me!" She reached for him, but the static on the screen spilled into the room as a hiss, filling her head with white noise. The smell of ozone became overwhelming. Something crawled across the carpet, heat without form, pressing against her ankles. She screamed, and everything went black. When she woke, it was morning. The rain had stopped. Sunlight slanted through the glass, soft and golden. The monitors were dark now, their screens cracked down the middle like veins in marble. Mark sat at the table with a cup of coffee, calm and smiling. "Morning," he said. Her throat felt raw. "What happened last night?" "Just a power surge." He reached across the table, hand warm over hers. "I fixed it while you were sleeping." She studied him. Something about his smile didn't settle right. It was perfect, but practiced, his features slightly rearranged, as if she were looking at a photograph that had been subtly retouched. "Do you remember the figure?" she asked. He frowned. "You really should stop obsessing, love. The more you feed it—" "Don't," she said sharply. "Don't say it like that." His expression softened. "You're tired. I'll make breakfast." He stood and moved toward the kitchen. His walk was almost identical, but not exactly. A half-beat out of sync. His footsteps didn't quite match the rhythm she knew. On the table, the coffee still shook faintly, though the air was still. The ozone smell returned. Days passed in unnatural normalcy. Mark was affectionate now, patient in every conversation. He cooked, cleaned, complimented her art. But his kindness was mechanical, as though repeating a script. Sometimes she caught him staring at the old thermal camera system, even though it no longer worked. The little red light blinked onboard power. She'd wake at night to find him sitting beside her, whispering things under his breath too low to hear. Once she dreamt of him standing over her, body translucent, the air between them shimmering with heat. When she woke, the pillow beneath her head pulsed softly. Thud, pause, thud, thud. Elena began painting again, not by choice, but compulsion. Her hands moved without thought, tracing outlines of a figure that resembled Mark and not Mark simultaneously. Each canvas showed a different stage of transformation. First human, then hollow, then a silhouette burning from within. When he entered her studio one afternoon, she froze. "Beautiful," he said. The word was flat, almost like a mirror. She looked at him, at the two bright eyes reflecting light that wasn't there, and realized the mirror in the bathroom had started fogging on its own again, even when cold. He kissed her forehead. You see, no ghosts, just us. But as he turned away, she saw something ripple across his shoulders, like heat distortion rising from asphalt. Beneath his shirt, something rhythmically shifted. In the reflection of the window, she saw two figures standing side by side. One was her, the other, his outline burned too bright, and where his face should have been, shadows pulsed in time with the sound from the pillow. In the weeks that followed, no one heard from them. The delivery courier who came to the door swore the house was empty, though the alarm system still blinked green. From outside, he could see two dinner plates laid neatly on the table, steam rising faintly from one. A soft electric hum came from the hall, the cameras quietly rebooting themselves, red lights active once more. And in the bedroom, inside the pillow where a head once rested, a heartbeat continued, steady, patient, waiting for silence to return.